Welcome to Miniatures Rundown. I'm Kevin, and today we're going to see if the chapter approves. So as many of you know, with 11th edition 40K coming out, there is a mission deck or match play, and 11th edition is no different here. We have a brand new match play, which is a chapter approved. There is a lot of familiarity between what we've experienced in previous seasons and what we're going to see in this season. However, there are some huge changes too. First, going over the contents and what you kind of expect. One of the big things that was present in previous box is that there are no objective markers in here. And obviously, one of the big reasons for that being that the 11th is making a really big deal out of making the terrain the objectives in this current edition. So there's no objective markers. There are instead card punch of these trackers, which are intended to be used to track certain secondaries and other missions throughout the game. There's a red side and a blue side for attacker, defender, whoever cares about that. But the big thing is that this deck really focuses on the individual player and the individual player experience. What I mean by that is that when you build your army, the detachments that you choose will have a force disposition assigned to them. And if you're playing a 3 detachment point detachment, or you're playing a 2 detachment point and a 1 detachment point, each individual detachment that is a part of your army is going to have a disposition assigned to it. The dispositions are priority assets, reconnaissance, disruption, take and hold, and purge the foe. And they all have kind of a different flavor for how they accompany each detachment. And I do feel like that this is one of the parts of 11th and this season specifically, because we don't know what's coming up in future seasons when they release future chapter approves throughout the life of this edition. But I do feel like this is the part of the game that is going to probably see a significant amount of flux as we continue through the early parts of this edition. And I think that a lot of attachments will see some change in what their force disposition represents. And I feel that even the matchups will change what mission is available depending on what your disposition is. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. The thing that is really unique, and I have been playing 40K for a very long time, one of the things about this mission set that is so unique is that it's often going to be asymmetrical. You're going to have a different objective than your opponent. Throughout all my time playing 40K, going to tournaments, going to narrative events, everything, it's always been a shared mission between the two players. Now, it's not. Your individual disposition compared to your opponent's disposition will determine what mission it is that you individually will play. And your opponent will probably have a slightly different mission that is based on the same comparison. Now, of course, what I mean by that is that, say for instance, I'm playing detachment that have disruption. So I'm going to have disruption, and my opponent, for instance, is playing purge the foe. So I would look on the card and take a look and see that I'm playing disruption and my opponent is playing purge the foe. So my specific mission will be delaying action. So I will have objectives that kind of coincide with what Games Workshop feels is the appropriate mission structure for that force disposition. What that will mean is that in any battle round, at the end of my turn, for each enemy unit destroyed this turn, I get 2 victory points. And then from the second battle round onward, if I control 1 or more objectives, excluding my home objective, usually don't score your home objective, it's 4 victory points. If you control 1 or more central objectives and 1 or more expansion objectives, you get 3 victory points. Well, those are some new words that we haven't had in previous seasons of 40K. So what does that all mean? So your home objective is pretty obvious. It's the objective that exists within your own deployment zone. On the deployment maps, they're usually marked with a little castle icon. Kind of shows what that is, which one is the home objective. And then the central objective is usually a skull with a circle in it. And then diamonds with a skull indicate expansion objectives. Another thing that is really unique about this current mission set is that there is deployments, and they're the deployments that we are pretty much used to as players. They are all very familiar. We've played on them all before, but the big difference is that the objectives are determined by where the terrain is. Now, there are objective markers that are on each of the terrain layout, each of the deployment layout cards, and that's where you would put a piece of terrain to indicate that objective. There's actually a guide in here for if you're not using the official terrain layouts to put to how to do your own terrain layout with the collection of terrain that you have. You don't necessarily have to use the official terrain layouts. As a matter of fact, there are no terrain layout cards in this deck. However, I imagine most people will be aiming to use the official terrain layouts. They seem to be designed to increase the amount of close interaction that you have with your opponent and reduce the amount of ability for you to shoot from one deployment zone to the other to destroy your opponent before they get a chance to do anything. We'll see if that really does what it looks like it's intended to do. The jury's still out on that one. However, I think that that's really interesting is that one of the big things about, for instance, we're talking about match play, so it's appropriate to talk about tournaments, is that in a tournament environment, over 2 decades of playing 40K, it's always been there's a mission pack, you know what missions are coming, and you and your opponent are both trying to achieve them. And now we'll have to see what tournaments end up doing. If it is more like, in some ways, a TCG where you and your opponent just show up and play the game together, and there's not necessarily a shared objective between you two, I think that that's a really interesting take on how we engage with and play 40K in a organized competitive setting. I think that just showing up to the table with a predetermined terrain layout and perhaps even a predetermined deployment, depending on what the terrain layout is going to be a huge paradigm shift in how we look at 40K. And to talk about the elephants in the room, of course, when it comes to this layout already, is that there do seem to be some dispositions that are a little bit more easier to achieve and score points with than others. I'm looking at you, Purge the Foe. Purge the Foe right now, at the time of this recording, is pretty infamous, even though 11th isn't even out yet, for playing 40K kind of on easy mode. It just requires you to kill stuff and hold objectives, which is how we've been playing 40K more or less for quite a while. The others all have different requirements on how you score points. Some of them, depending on how your matchup between dispositions ends up, you could have to perform actions in certain places of the board to score, or you could have to perform actions on pieces of terrain or your enemy units or whatever in order for you to score points, which of course is a little bit more challenging than just letting rip with your guns. That is the current kind of overarching opinion that I've often seen. I myself, at the time of this recording, have not actually played a game of 11th yet, so I don't have any informed opinions of my own personal experience playing, but I do feel like Purge the Foe is definitely an easier objective set than any of the others. Specifically, Reconnaissance and Disruption look to be more on the difficult side. You'd usually play armies that do a whole lot of like movement tricks and like repositioning and stuff like that. That's not really my play style. So those armies I'm not finding my dispositions in those particular in my army roster at the moment. So my view is a little skewed in that regard. However, there are also the attacker and defender objectives, secondary objectives, which are they're the same deck. Just you only need one deck for each pair of players, which is once again great. The attacker and defender decks are the same, and most of the secondary objectives that you see in there are going to be pretty familiar. You have cleanse, you have take the flanks, you have all kinds of stuff that's going to look really familiar to you from a player perspective. The one thing that is really unique about this season is that there's not a hand limit to the number of secondary objectives you can hold. You're still drawing 2 every turn, but you don't need to discard down in order to draw new objectives. which I think is a big quality of life change from 10th edition, because there are so many times where you get an objective that is not beneficial to you early, but you know you can achieve it, but you end up holding on to it because you know you can do it, but if you get rid of it now, then you're kind of left in a position where you are having a hard time scoring points because you're drawing the wrong cards at the wrong time. Now, don't get me wrong, that can still happen here, but at least you can hold on to cards that you get early and you know you can achieve later. You're still limited to 15 victory points per turn, so you're you can't hold on to a bunch and then score a bunch and just kind of run up from behind. That's not going to be a thing. However, you can still discard a secondary at the end of the turn for a command point, which I think that means most people are still going to play tactical objectives. It's pretty rare that I've seen people play fixed objectives in 10th edition, and I don't think that in 11th, at least for this season, it's going to look a whole lot different than that. I think that there is quite a bit of reason to still play tactical. It allows you a lot of flexibility to change up your tactics, change up and adapt to what's going on during the game. And if your opponent's easily able to shut you down in one particular area, fixed objectives become a huge liability. So I just don't see people playing tactical all that much, but you can play fixed if that's your playstyle and it really works for you and you like it, or if you just find it fun. I'm really looking forward to diving in and seeing how this really works all together and seeing if the hubbub about Purge the Foe is true or not. I kind of feel like it might be, but that's not the point. I do feel like there is going to be a lot of flux within this season as 11th editions begins to mature a little bit and people figure out where the quote-unquote broken stuff is lying and where the stuff that just doesn't work or isn't fun is. So I expect that there will be changes in force dispositions across many factions, if not all factions, and probably some changes in what the matchups equal between two different dispositions or the same disposition meeting on the battlefield. But overall, I think this is a really fresh take on mission structure for 40K, and I'm more excited than I thought I would be. And I was definitely surprised when I saw this for the first time. So I really like what I'm seeing so far. A little bit nervous about a couple of things that kind of feel auto-takey, but I mean, you've been playing Warhammer for long enough, that's nothing new. With all that said, though, I am very excited, and I'd like to know what you think. Let us know in the comments below, and if you like this content and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out our Patreon down below. Just a few bucks thrown our way goes a long way to helping us keep the lights on and keep bringing you this great content. Thank you, and happy gaming!